And I said, honey, you can put your nail wherever you want as long as there's pounding going on. And oh, hi, sorry about that. Didn't see ya. How you doing today? Welcome to another episode of Cold Blood and Cocktails. As you beautiful people know, any tiff you may have, please cast it away because this is a channel of positive energy. Okay? Thank you. And why are we dressed like a wall? Well, if you know anything about today's story, you will instantly understand. But if you don't, you'll just have to wait till the end. Do I look a little bit like Shrek with chicken pox? Possibly. You know, we tried our hardest and that's all we can do. I did not try my hardest. I've had 3 drinks and here we are. But at least we showed up. But before we dive into the case, I do want to tell you about today's sponsor. I loved working with them. Today's video is brought to you by Florasis. If you have any kind of social media and you follow makeup, then you've probably seen this brand and thought, wow, these look like sculptures. Everything about Florasis is luxurious and wearable art. From the packaging to the quality to the visual aesthetics. I'm usually not one to make note about how a product is poured or pressed, but my loves, look at this. It's almost one of those products that's like too pretty to touch. But of course, I'm not going to promote a product just purely based on looks. The product itself has to be outstanding quality. Like at the end of the day, this is makeup and you want to actually be able to use it. And I've used everything that I'm going to show today so many times. And honey, the quality is there. So let me show you a few products and we can do a quick, simple glam. All right, face base is done. And the first products we're going to go in with are the breathable powders. They have a pressed one and a loose version. And these little ladies in particular are the gorgeous peach silk powders, meaning they're made with silk powder instead of talc. And I don't know what kind of moon landing technology they use to grind this, but it is incredibly finely milled. It is just so luxuriously velvety, smooth, and silky, which makes sense, it's silk. This stuff makes your makeup crease proof. It's great for acne prone skin or oily skin, or if you're like me, sensitive skin. So let me start by going in with just half of my face. Right under my eyes, I'm gonna take the pressed powder and let's pop that little mama right under there, and oh, instantly she's smooth. She looks 10 years younger. It is absolutely gonna be one of my forever powders. It is just divine, mama. So I'm just gonna take the loose powder on the rest of this half of my face. I still have a nice little glow from within versus this side with no powder, which is already starting to crease up. Next, we're gonna dip into the flowery makeup palette. This guy actually can go on the face and the eyes, and these stick on like it's nobody's business. Look at how nice those are. Let's dive into our little bronzy contour, and we're gonna start with her right here. Oop, can't forget the double chin. And just to help re-brighten up the under eyes, I'm gonna take some of this matte highlighting powder and set a teeny tiny bit right under there. And then let's add a little bit of color to our face with some blush, and they kind of have a really nice glow to them too. I don't have any highlighter on yet. I still look dewy, which speaking of highlighter, I have to have it. So let's take her right there and let's go in with a simple eye look using the same palette. And we're gonna start by deepening up the crease with this bad boy right here. This stuff just blends itself out and looks airbrushed on the skin. It's actually infused with calendula and peony to help give it that airbrushed look. And if you're ever worried about ingredients, this brand is chock full of skin-loving ingredients. Like, they really help combine skincare with makeup. And then let's dip into the matte highlighter, and I'm gonna take that and place it right on the inner part of the lid. Let's dip into the blush and place that right above the crease line in a little tiny baby circular motions. And then to finish, I'm gonna take some of the shimmery highlighter and place that right on the lid. All right, the eye look is done, so let's finish up with lipsticks. Y'all, these are just gorgeous. Take a peeky poo at this stunning packaging, and then get this, ready? Oh, it pops out. This is the most gorgeous, intricate design that I have ever seen on a lipstick. But first, I have to show them to you swatched, because, the creaminess is just unreal. These just feel so moisturizing. They're incredibly pigmented. Yeah. And then right in the middle, I'm gonna go in with some 21. Also, look how fancy this is. It even has a chain with a pearl on it. And then I also want to mention their amazing oil makeup remover. This stuff will remove any kind of makeup, and it's like the perfect balance of moisture and makeup removal, so that after your makeup is off, your skin is still hydrated and glowing and plump and supple. If you're curious about Florasis, I will definitely link you down below. Totally recommend checking out their website. Their products are just breathtaking. But a huge thank you to Florasis for sponsoring this episode of Cold Blood and Cocktails. Without you and without amazing brands like this series wouldn't be at all possible. So truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for being here. So for today's drink, it's nothing fancy. I just really have to hydrate. So we have a very watered down watermelon margarita. And by watered down, I mean it's just like that much alcohol, that much juice, and then topped off with some fizz, which isn't fizz anymore. Oh my God, there's hair in it. Oh my gosh, there's actually beard fur from our last video. That was like 2 weeks ago. How in the fuck? Well, anyways, it is so wonderful to be back again. I'm so grateful that you're here. It's a shame we're meeting under such a dark topic, but still, murder mystery brings us all together. Also, I'm gonna lose consciousness. This thing is just like choking me, and not even in the good way either. Okay, but let's move on. So today's case, it's weird. It's weird. And it's so bizarre because each time someone tells this story or a news source writes an article about it, a little nugget of more information is added for drama. It's almost like the story seems to have turned into a horror thriller instead of like a murder mystery case. So I will say that with all of my research, it was kind of hard to decipher what was true and what was added. Like even the people writing the articles that I would read, they weren't even sure what was real or what was bullshit. So my apologies if this isn't 100% accurate. So at the end of the day, we will respect the victims because that part was absolutely real, but we can kind of take this as a story and a mixture of a murder mystery. There's just too much meat and girth to this story to stuff inside one little tiny story. But if you do want a good read, if you got some downtime, do some research on this case. It's very interesting. And who might we be talking about? Why, a boy named Danny Laplante. I think that's how you say his name. With Danny though, it wasn't necessarily the murders that made him scary, more so the shit that he did before that. I mean, he did murder people, which does suck, like boo hiss, we hate that. But he's not really famous in the crime world for the killings. He's famous for the events that took place way before them, and these are the stories that were probably embellished and fluffed up to sell papers. They were given a little bit of Viagra. But regardless, Danny's tale is a story of rejection, of love being directed towards the wrong people, of desperation, of just a whole slew of fuckery ending in serious trauma for his victims. So who was this Danny fella? Well, he was born in 1970 in Massachusetts. Even though he arrived into a time of love, doves, beads, bells, and pot brownies, he wasn't as excited about life as people were about the recently invented floppy disk. In fact, he was a jailhouse regular since a very young age. Like, I don't know if he had prison tattoos, but his name was definitely known by all the guards because he was in and out so much. But with him being a minor, details of the smaller crimes were kept from the public, but we do know that outside of jail, Danny had a fucked up life. Like, poor Danny had psychological and sexual abuse coming at him left and right like fucking dodgeball from almost every adult that was in his life, which, as you could imagine, really fucked him up. Like, all of the people that you should be able to look up to and should be protecting you end up abusing you and treating you like garbage? How could you not be a little more than twisted from that? And this abuse wasn't just a one-time thing, it was on a regular basis. It's like Danny's dad would pick a daily punishment out of a hat and he would almost find enjoyment picking new ways to abuse him. And it was said that his dad was also one of the adults that sexually assaulted him regularly. So this kid was like seriously messed up. He was labeled the creepy weird kid and was bullied and had no friends. Like, kids can be so cruel. This is why we are nice to people, man. Like, you never know what the fuck people have going on, and just a simple smile can change their entire life. Anyways, Danny began going weeks, maybe even months without showering, and he'd start to smell like a moldy tuna patty, which of course made him an even bigger target at school. I'm not sure though if maybe he'd stop showering so that his dad wouldn't sexually abuse him, but if so, how fucking sad. And then Danny was also dyslexic and wasn't receiving the help he needed, so he just started shutting down. Like, he was really up against a wall. No, but seriously, by high school, he just stopped giving a fuck about his hygiene altogether. He didn't care about his appearance. Any reason to live or to better himself totally went out the window. And I'm pretty sure he was borderline suicidal from a very young age. Which, I know he turned out to be a killer, but it seems like with more than half of these cases we've done, a killer's childhood directly affected their need to kill and could have easily been avoided with better parenting. Like, why did these shitty-ass people have to abuse him? Why did the classmates mentally and verbally torture him like the adults? This was just kind of like the Maribel case we did a few stories back. This was all a recipe for creating a killer. Anyways, teachers at school really can tell that he has some shit going on, so he's finally referred to the school psychologist to try and get some help. And this should have been where the story ends and we can leave on a happy note and he lives in a rose garden among monks. But we are here today, which means that's not how it happened. The psychiatrist ended up diagnosing Danny with hyperactivity disorder, which it was like, fuck, let's add this to the already spiraling mental case from the abuse at home and from classmates. But the psychiatrist was like, honey, let me help you. And Danny was like, okay, yay. Until eventually the psychiatrist was like, Let me help you. And so for an entire freaking year, the psychiatrist sexually abused Danny during every single session. Why the fuck is this kid like an abuse magnet? Like, he was abused at home, at school, at therapy. There wasn't a single safe place for him. He wasn't the leader in anything. He really didn't have anything to look forward to or that gave him thrills. So one day in his early teens, he was walking in a store and took something. Just took it. And honey, did this give him a thrill. This was better than sneaking into the dirty mag section at Pete's Petrol Palace. Oh, and the best part about this was that he was in control. He could decide what to steal, where to put it, and what to do with it, and nobody knew. Well, then stealing Butterfingers from the gas station turned into stealing socks from the mall, which then turned into stealing records from the music store, and soon he was like, I'm getting pretty good at this shit. I need more. Well, you've heard of the home buying bug. Well, by 15, he had the home invasion persuasion. He thought, yeah, this is cool if I break into people's houses. Oh, it's so fetch. But simply taking someone's valuables, that wasn't enough because it might take them ages to even realize their shit's gone. And to rough the whole house up and make it obvious that there had been a break-in, well, that just seemed like too much work and probably increased the chances of getting caught. So after Danny would pocket a few goods, he'd ever so slightly move things around the home so that it was kind of clear that someone had been there, but not immediately obvious. Like if you went to go clean the toilet, the scrub brush would have been moved from underneath the bathroom sink into the master closet, or you go to pull out your vibrator and it's stuck tit first in the Jiffy jar. Honey, we've been there more than twice. Well, eventually it just got to the point where he wasn't even invading homes to steal shit. He was just doing it to fuck with people and play mind games on them, which is obviously terrible, and we should not condone that and totally should not do. But at the same time, it's slightly darkly comical, not like haha comical. It's kind of like a big fuck you to a world that's royally screwed him over his entire damn life. Well, flash forward to 1986, Danny had a sweet 16, and this was the year that set into motion a series of very unfortunate events that he'd forever be famous for. Choices matter, people, and this is a great example. Danny somehow got the number of a local family. People aren't certain if he broke into the house at some point and that's when he got their phone number. But regardless, this home had 3 people, a dad and his 2 daughters. The daughters were Tina, who was 15, and Karen, who was 9. Danny calls the house and is like, hi, are Tina and Karen home? The dad's like, who the fuck is this? Why are you calling my daughters, you creep? And Danny's like, well, calm your tits, daddy-o. I go to the same school as Tina and I got this number from a mutual friend. And the dad was like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. A lion's gotta protect his cubs. Danny ends up telling the girls that he was a good-looking, athletic blonde and was very well educated and he lived in the area. Tina, who is starting to become a little bit boy crazy, was like, can we get a catfishing shot? Because this is already very suspicious. Well, Tina, with her hormones just running rampant, began talking to Danny on the regs. Then they were talking nightly, and then before anyone knew it, they were like, hey, you want to go on a date? Of course, Tina wouldn't say no to a handsome blonde boy who seemed to have his shit together and was quite the conversationalist. So Danny arrives on her doorstep the evening of the date, and surely you can imagine Tina's shock when she sees who she's talking to. Blonde hair? I think the fuck not. Cutie with a jock's booty? Hell to the no. In fact, this dark-haired, dirty, greasy little boy had literally no attractive features to Tina whatsoever. But her dad raised her to never judge a book by its cover, so she let him take her to the town fair. However, about an hour into the date, she realized that maybe she didn't want to read Danny's book and had been very much accurately judging him. So she excused herself from the date and went home. My kind of girl, just do your thing, honey. I honestly think that Danny could have had a chance with her because Tina seemed lovely. Danny probably was a very interesting person through all the walls that he'd built up. But what creeped her the hell out was when they were standing in line at the Ferris wheel and Danny learned that Tina and Karen's mom had recently died of cancer. Instead of being like, oh my gosh, holy shit, I am so sorry, let's ride this ride, you can cry on my shoulder. No, he was not a smooth operator. He was like, oh, tell me more about your mom's death. Like, how did you feel the moment she died? How much did your mom suffer? What did her dying body look like? Like, he was obsessed with her mom's death and wouldn't stop asking Tina questions about it for the entire date. Like, honey, I know you're awkward, but fuck, read the damn room. Obviously not a cute look, and we clearly understand why Tina only gave the date an hour, poor girl. As one could assume, she said no to a second date, but little did she know that she'd see Danny yet again, but in a much different circumstance, but more on that later. So time moves on, and one night, Tina and Karen are really missing their mother, so they think, Hey, what if we try to contact mom through a seance? Seance? Beyonce? Which I think we can all agree that would have been everyone's first choice. We all would have done the same. But they really didn't take it seriously. They were young, they were naive, and I'm not quite certain why they even did the seance if they didn't think anything would happen. I guess just for fun. Well, these little ladies all but shit themselves when they began their ritual in the basement, and shortly into their chanting, they could feel the hair on the backs of their necks stand up. It was almost like someone was watching them. But there were no voices that came to them, no signs of their mom, just an eerie feeling like something in the darkness was peering at their every freaking move. Well, they gave up with their chants, they called it a night, headed upstairs, grabbed a snack, and then went to bed. However, shortly into their sleep, the girls were awoken by a rhythmic pounding. Tina's like, Dad, did you bring the neighbor home again to practice adult wrestling? But no, Pops was dead ass asleep. So they creep back into their bedroom and once more a rhythmic knocking begins. Holy shit, they think this is wonderful. This must be Mom communicating with us from the other side. They start asking the spirit questions, to which it would reply with knocks against the wall. How exciting, they uncovered a supernatural barrier that they'd be able to talk to their mom through. This continued for many days, but the knocking became so frequent that it started waking them up in the night, and then it started keeping them up. Like, Mom, seriously, let me sleep, god damn. Can't we do this after like 9 a.m.? But then slowly items around the house started to disappear. Not like a washing machine or anything, but like things would be on the table one day and then they'd be strewn across the floor the next. Or the family would come home from an outing and they'd find the living room furniture would be on this side of the room instead of that side. Or a bedroom would be totally rearranged, not even with good feng shui either. The nerve. So now the girls are like, well, fuck a duck. Maybe we opened this portal and this isn't Mom. Like maybe this is a demon and we're being haunted. Ew. The dad was like, screw all of this. I know it's you two who are doing this. But they denied it and they were like, I'm pretty sure we just let a vengeful ghost into our house. But Frank, that's the dad's name, he was like, you know what? This is just emotional trauma from the death of your mother. That's right. In his eyes, these girls were being absurd. Like, how could a ghost move shit? And if they can certainly pick up a vacuum and help clean around the house, damn it. Well, the trees change color, some snowflakes fall, and before we know it, January of 87 rolls around, and the girls are sitting all alone in their front room when the knocking picks up again. At this point, the tapping had become so frequent that it was driving the girls absolutely batshit crazy. And to piss them off even more, it only happened when they were alone or when their dad was out of earshot. This time, though, rather than the noise coming from the walls, the tapping seemed to be coming from the basement. Suspicious shot, anyone? This is always how scary movies starts. Like, why does shit have to happen in creepy-ass basements? And just like in every scary movie, the girls go towards the sound. Real smart, ladies. Real freaking smart. We would all do it, though. But they actually were on top of their shit. Like, they grabbed a couple kitchen knives before they headed to the basement door, and they opened it up fully expecting to see a demon standing there ready to drag them to hell, but there was nothing. So they turn the stairwell light on, begin their ascent, and follow the tapping noises. Ugh. They slowly reached the room beneath the home and instantly regretted ever doing the seance. Because written on the walls in blood was the message, I'm in your room, come find me. Ugh. Suspicious. The girls looked at each other, looked back at the message, and then ran upstairs screaming their heads off. They flew out the front door and waited in the driveway till Frank came home. And the moment he arrived, the girls were sputtering and stuttering about a message written in blood on the basement walls. And while these little ladies were blubbering on, he's just like, poor dears, they really aren't handling their mom's death very well. Once again, Frank was certain that the girls had written the message, and not only did he make the girls clean the mess up, he ordered the girls to undergo grief counseling, which probably wasn't a bad idea, honestly. A few weeks go by, and at this point, the tapping had kind of stopped, so it was a nice break for the girls. They'd finally be able to get some sleep. So the therapist tries to work with them until eventually they think, you know, maybe this actually wasn't our heads. Not quite sure how both sisters would experience the same hallucination, but sure, Jan, whatever you say. So they blocked the fact that their house could be haunted and put that way in the back of their little minds. A few weeks go by and Frank is happier than a purebred poodle on a pool noodle, knowing that his therapy plan, it worked. All the tapping stories seemed to have stopped. Life was swell. Until one day when the girls are home alone, of course, sitting in the living room, and they start to hear a faint tapping. It wasn't coming from the basement nor the living room wall. They got up and headed to the kitchen, but the tapping seemed to fade the closer they got to it. It wasn't coming from there. Maybe the den? Nope. So they walked down the hallway towards the bedrooms. They could kind of hear it in their dad's room, but the moment they stepped inside of Tina's room, they could instantly tell that there was a spirit on the other side of the wall. And if that wasn't creepy enough to make your dick curl, once again there was a message written in blood on the wall. It's a good thing it was wallpaper. It's very easy to clean. This time the message said, I'm back, come and find me. Creepy shot because again, what the the hell? Just like before, the girls end up doing a Scooby-Doo style exit, scrambling in midair, flying to the door. They run to the neighbor's house and are like, there's a goddamn demon in our house. The neighbor's like, what, a squirrel? No, an actual factual demon. And this neighbor knew about the loss of their mother, and they also knew that these girls weren't taking it too well, so they were like, okay, sweetie, let's go over and have a little look. Condescending much? The neighbor walks in, everything is normal, nothing's out of place. They're like, see, this house is fine. But the girls are like, no, Nancy, go to the bedroom. So Nancy, who I actually don't know if her name was in fact Nancy, she just seemed like a Nancy. But anyways, while Nancy's standing there, she starts to hear little taps too. She looks to make sure that both girls are still standing next to her, not off playing mind games. But Tina and Karen are both right here giving her the I told you so bitch kind of look. Nancy slowly creeps down the hallway towards Tina's bedroom, and she's not sure if at this point she should shit from fear or laugh from a practical joke. And the tapping's getting louder the closer they get to the bedroom, and as they turn in, there in big bloody letters is the same message that Tina said there would be. So they all run back to Nancy's house to call Frank, but once again he's like, this is the girls doing, don't be fooled. He said, is anything out of place? And they're like, well, no. He says, are there signs of a break-in or anything? And they tell him, no, there's just this big ass message written in blood all over the wall, but it's probably nothing. Frank said, stay the hell right there, I'm coming home. And he sped off in his car, just furious that he'd spent thousands of dollars in therapy that didn't seem to have done anything. He pulls in his driveway, smoke coming out of his ears because he's fuming. And he's like, we're gonna end this bullfuckery right here, right now. He unlocked the door, he marched into his house with Nancy, Tina, and Karen, and he was immediately put off. When the ladies had left, everything had been pristine. Now, in just the time it took Nancy to call Frank and for Frank to drive home, the place was in complete shambles. It was like a tornado had come and swept through their home. Can we get another suspicious shot for that? Oh, this is just creepy. At this point, the sun had pretty much set and it was getting dark out, of course. Frank moseys down the hallway towards his daughter's moonlit room and wasn't at all surprised to see the same kind of message that had been in the basement. He was like, oh, look, that. Except now the words, marry me, had been added below the first message. Frank gives a huge eye roll, and as he turns to tell his daughters off, he stops because he sees something in the corner of the room. Frank's balls replaces Adam's apple, and he starts screaming because there, standing across the room, was a young man. He was wearing a full face of makeup, Frank's deceased wife's dress, a blonde wig, and was carrying a hatchet. Who might this young man be? You guessed it, Jack Nicholson. It was Danny. Frank lunged towards Danny and they were entangled in a struggle for a minute until all of a sudden Danny just disappeared from sight. Poof, gone faster than a gay with commitment issues. The police were called and they began testing the blood that was on the wall, only to find that this message wasn't written in blood. It was written in everyone's favorite tomato-based condiment, ketchup. But then they were like, how in the fuck did Danny get inside the house in the first place and escape so quickly? Somebody's been playing with their magic kit. So police search every nook and cranny of this house, eventually finding a small door behind a built-in cupboard that led into Tina's room. When officers opened it, they found a hole big enough to somewhat comfortably hold a person. They shine a light inside and there was Danny curled up like a baby skunk dressed like the corpse of the girl's mom. The officers shout at Danny and tell him to put his hands up, but he wouldn't, so the officer ended up holding a gun to Danny's head, telling him to get the fuck out of the hole. Get out of the hole! And this is when the cops knew Danny was in a really bad place because even with a gun held to his head, he looked excited. He wasn't scared at all to have a gun inches from his brain, like this was almost riveting to him. Well, apparently Danny had been pretending to be the ghost of Tina and Karen's mom to torment them, and today was the day he was finally gonna reveal himself dressed as their dead mother. Nobody really knew if it was for his own entertainment or if he genuinely wanted to scare the living shit out of the girls, but the fact that he had a hatchet probably doesn't mean that it would have ended too well, especially looking back at this and knowing what he'd do in the future. The police finally haul Danny out of the hole and then crawl in themselves. There's a tea kettle, some scones, a miniature TV. Honey, this was the Ritz. No, not really, but inside this hole were man-made tunnels all throughout the house, from the basement to the bedrooms to the living room and even inside the kitchen. And all of the rooms had little tiny peepholes so that Danny could spy on everyone at any time and make sure that Frank was gone when he'd start the tapping. What the actual fuck? And so he's caught. You'd think this is the end of the story, right? Of course it's not over because this is a murder mystery. Where the fuck's the murder? Oh, well, hold your titty berries because this is going to be sad and gruesome. Immediately after Danny was caught in the hole, he was placed in a juvie facility for an entire year. And because he was underage, we really don't know how his experience behind bars was, if he was rehabilitated, if he felt bad, if his mentality got even worse. But because we know how this story's gonna end, I think it's safe to say that he probably got worse, like much worse. The moment Danny was released from juvie, he went right back to his old life of burglary. He didn't think anyone would want to hire him, and he has to eat, so he decided to steal from people in the community. And during one of his break-ins, Danny stole 2 guns from the neighbor like 2 doors down. He was really playing it wild and seemed to only be breaking into people's homes around the neighborhood, which nobody said he was a smart cookie. And then like a half a mile down the road from his own family's house, Danny broke into the Gustafson home. And this was the second time he'd broken in there. The first time he'd stolen some items, and now foolishly he came back with guns. He was greeted by Priscilla, who was 33. She was pregnant. She had 2 young children, Abigail and William. Danny really hadn't planned on anyone being home, so his first reaction was to bolt out the window, but he panicked and ended up dragging Priscilla upstairs and tying her to the bed. Again, people, choices. We can always make better ones. Because now it seemed as though Danny had gone from just a creeper to a full-on savage animal. Andrew, her husband, had been at work when Danny broke in, and when he came home, he was met with the most horrific sight he ever could have encountered. He discovered his wife lying face down on the bed, which was now soaked in blood with splatters on the pillows and walls. Danny had sexually assaulted Priscilla, then shot her point blank multiple times in the head. Andrew ran out of the room and immediately called the police before collapsing outside. And when the cops arrived, they pulled back the shower curtain, hoping that maybe the kids were hiding behind it, and discovered the body of William, who had been drowned in the upstairs tub. Then they found Abigail, who seems to have been seen by Danny on his way out, and then he drowned her in the downstairs tub. And then Danny went straight from there to his niece's birthday party as if nothing had happened. Even the guests at the party would later say they had no idea Danny had done anything because he was acting perfectly normal. Can we get a what the actual fuck shot? Investigators immediately thought, well, this must be Danny. After all, he had been a bad seed in the neighborhood, what with his frequent run-ins with the law. In fact, moments after the cops were called and the media arrived, the first person interviewed for TV said, "I wonder what Danny's up to lately." Who needs DNA when you leave a trail like what he left? And what if his break-in into Tina and Karen's house with the axe had just been practiced for something like this? Of course, Danny knew his name would be brought up, so he fled the area. He jogged to a nearby town, broke into a woman's house, kidnapped her in her car, and then drove off. Choices. And oddly enough, they actually drove straight past the searching officers. The kidnapped woman ended up doing a tuck and roll near a stop sign, and while he was stopped, someone who had seen a picture of Danny on the news recognized him and alerted the police. And just 48 hours after the search for him began, he was found hiding behind a dumpster, of all places. And he was totally defensive. He was like, "What the fuck do you want? I'm innocent. I live here." Innocent my left foot. Well, actually, his left foot. His left sock, to be specific. Because there, embedded in his sock fibers, was a hair from Abigail, which set into stone his involvement in the family's murder. A year after that, for the murders, he was sentenced to 3 life sentences. And allegedly, since being in prison, he really hasn't shown any remorse for his actions. I guess it's clear that he does have some kind of personality disorders, and then finally in 2017 he broke and came to terms with his actions, just profusely apologizing to everyone involved. But was it a real apology, or was it just words from someone who simply wanted to get out of prison? His appeals have all been denied, so I guess we'll never know. But there you go. What a sad and tragic story. You can see all of these events in his childhood that just led up to this. It's not as though he had to have run-ins with the law or had to kill people. Like, he didn't have to become a murderer. But we see this time and time again, like over and over, this fucking cycle. It's just heartbreaking all around for the little boy inside of Danny, for the victims especially. But yeah, let me know down in the comments below if there are any little tidbits to the story that you'd like to add. I always love hearing from you. Really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for being here. I truly love having you. And if you want a little bit more me in your life, please head over to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/poplux. You get videos a day early, you get Patreon only content, and best part, it is cheap, fun, and fancy, just like me. And like always, please be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell down below so that you're notified anytime I upload a new video. Don't forget my newest collection of highlighters, including Black Ice, which does change from black to white, will be available again at thepoplux.com. Also, my latest album, Kiss of Fame, is available everywhere online that music is sold. Thank you so much to everyone who's supporting them. Comment down below, let me know what you thought of this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Snapchat, Instagram, and Twitter at officialnady, and you can follow me online at thepoplux.com. Thank you so much for watching. I love you all, and I will see you again soon. Bye!